Well, listen, there's always going to be haters.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was talking around the house some years ago when my grandmother was still alive, and she overheard my phone conversation, and she goes, "What is this hater? What do you mean?" And I explained it to her, and she sat there and took a sip of her Pabst Blue Ribbon, and she goes, "I think it's good if you don't have haters, you're not doing something right." That's what my grandmother said. I was like, "Granny, I love you."
The David Ellefson Show. Featuring Grammy Award winner David Ellefson and respected metal journalist Joshua Toomey. Presented by EllefsonEmporium.com. Here's David and Joshua.
Well, welcome to the show here. Good to see you again. And Joshua Toomey, my co-host here. I got a question for you. You have left Morbid Angel. You started I Am Morbid. I have a similar situation, left Megadeth, and then I have Kings of Thrash, where we play early Megadeth stuff and some other things. So kind of a similar story. Give me your sentiments and what it feels like to, have a setting where you can go play your songs with a new band and all that kind of stuff. What's that like for you?
Well, I mean, it's really a celebration of the history and the legacy of the band.
Right.
I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. I love my fans. I love the music. And thankfully, everybody else appreciates the music as well. So.
Yeah, that's kind of the same thing for me. As it was, I have Jeff Young with me, who was with Megadeth in 1980, 87, 88. And Chris Poland, of course, who was with me on the first couple Megadeth records. So to me, it's the same thing. It's like celebrating it. The fans want to hear that stuff because, in Megadeth, we barely touch most of that stuff in the catalog. So it's cool to go play that. I mean, we sell out the whiskey every time we play there, so it's kind of one of those things. So, but you've been busy with a bunch of other stuff. Just maybe bring us up to speed on just everything you've been doing.
I've got currently 4 things I'm doing.
Okay.
I have a solo country band that I do.
Mm-hmm.
I have a band called Ultimus that we have 2 records, and we also have Terrorize. So I get to do whatever mood I'm in or whatever the latest things going on. I can find something to get busy with that keeps me interested.
So country music. So you started in the Tampa death metal scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of one of the OGs of that whole world. And for what that's worth, that's about like saying, oh, the Bay Area thrash scene. It's like that doesn't even exist. That's long sailed, you can't find one remnant of that anywhere up there anymore, including a venue or anything. Maybe the same for Tampa. So you live in Texas now.
Yeah, I've been in Texas for almost 12 years now.
12 years. So country. So what has that been something that's been, because I grew up around country music as well on a farm in Minnesota, right? So I've been around it. I can appreciate it. I kind of had to hear it because it's what my parents had, it was like the Statler Brothers and Charlie Pride. And I remember the new country was John Denver and Olivia Newton-John, you know what I mean? So it's, I've lived through two new country eras, that and then Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, Shania Twain, so I've been through 2 new country movements. But is yours kind of like Texas country? Because I know Texas has its own sound to some degree, I think.
It does. I feel like I have my own sound, so I'm not really trying to replicate anyone else. Just felt inspired and wrote some songs and put a band together, and the rest is history.
So what do you write that with? Or do you write on guitar?
Acoustic guitar.
It's kind of hard to write on bass, country music, right?
Well, I don't. I mean, I hear everything. So sometimes it's bass, sometimes it starts with a vocal line, sometimes it's putting some chords together that sound nice, and it's however it comes. I accept the gift.
Sure.
With the country stuff, where did that kind of come into play with being in the Tampa death metal scene? Were you listening to it back then, and was that kind of rampant in the scene, or you just kind of checking that out on your own?
Well, I don't think necessarily it's rampant in the scene. I mean, I don't know many metalheads who are not fans of, say, David Allan Coe or Johnny Cash or Waylon Jennings, some of the old school stuff. But I moved to Texas, and I met some different people and felt inspired, and just went for it.
So for performing, there's a great photo of you, of course, online. There's obviously a ton of photos, but one that's like on Wikipedia and stuff is, you're at, I think, the Dynamo Festival, which, is so indicative of, here's death metal guy, one of the ultimate festivals in Europe, right? So obviously death metal stuff, you bring that over here to Europe. I say over here, I'm in Germany right now. So that thrives over here, right? I have my own band, Dieth, out of Poland, death. They call it death metal. To me, it's not really. It's quite wide, but that, having one of those in my own sort of musical cachet, learned a bit more about that scene, where it thrives, the different sort of zip codes of it, because in America, of course, Tampa, you guys represented a whole movement out of there. So that is mostly over here, right? So what's been going on mostly on that side of it as far as touring? Is it mostly is it Europe or the States mostly for death metal stuff?
Well, I would say Europe, South America, Asia, Australia. I don't have to probably tell you the challenge of touring in the States. Everybody's got to put a vacuum cleaner in your pocket. You work your ass off, and by the time you're done and paid everybody else, you're paying yourself less than than anybody else makes. So I feel like unfair. And if something's profitable, but I mean, it takes a lot of time to do this stuff, and time away from my family. So when I do something, which I enjoy doing, by the way, I think I have the best job in the world. But aside from that, it just needs to work, and it can't be a loss.
Right. Yeah. I mean, do you have label support in any of these situations? Because I know that, that ship is mostly sailed for most of us, right? Like,
we remember the good old days, don't we?
We do. We do.
You sell CDs and records, and and you'd see a royalty check that was, as fat as it could be. Yeah. I mean, thankfully, probably you and I are both, I'm not speaking for you, but we're grandfathered in from a physical sales standpoint. So that continues. The catalogs continue. Right. Doing new stuff is that's a whole nother avenue.
Well, I always say that you really have to do it for the love of the game, the love of the music, maybe you find this too. The first record is always great, right? Because it's a new experience. It's like, it's like the first date, right? It's a new experience. It's fun with new people. And maybe you found this doing your country gig as well, right? It's something new. It's fresh. It's exciting. The second record, the second maybe time you go back to the dance is a little bit different, because now there is a bit of an expectation. I love when you put something up, and you post a new single, you drop a new video or something, and everybody starts clamoring. They want to see it around the world, which is great. Lucky for us, right? We have fans that want to see us. But as you said, the reality of getting some of these things out of the garage on the road and getting it out there is just a whole other reality. And, America being one of the hardest, unless you're really playing the bigger festivals, or, you have,
it's very expensive.
It's very expensive. Yeah, exactly. So, Josh is in Primer 55, and they're getting ready to go out this fall on a bunch of stuff. So, Josh, you're about ready to experience all over again.
Well, it's either suck it up, buttercup, in a van, or pay through the nose for a coach.
Yeah.
David, I
yeah.
wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about, the Tampa Bay, death metal scene. And then obviously David Ellefson. I guess David Ellefson, you'll be Dave today. How about that? But kind
I'm
of
always in a
growing up,
band. I'm always in a band with 2 Daves for some reason.
too
so I don't
many
know.
Davids on this podcast. No,
No,
but
yeah.
I-
Some
as
of us
being
are
a
better than others.
just being a fan of both of your, of both Megadeth and Morbid Angel, kind of growing up and getting into, Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth, and then gravitating towards Morbid Angel when I'm seeing you guys on Headbangers Ball and things like that. What did you guys kind of take from Metallica and those guys and just kind of expand upon, I guess, is the question.
Well, I mean, I listened to those bands, but I wouldn't say they were necessarily, drove us to do what we did. More probably Merciful Fate, stuff like that, and then obviously all the old stuff I listened to, including Sabbath, Grand Funk Railroad. Mel Shacker, by the way, what a badass player!
Come on, dude. There you go.
Nobody
that's
writes bass lines like this anymore. It's gone.
Dude,
The
it's
70s
like
music has some of the wonderful bass lines that's not just trying to shadow a manic guitar riff. I mean,
and Mel was like, he really was like a Motown rock bass player. I listened to that live Grand Funk album over and over again. It's one of my flying records. When I fly,
Sure.
I listen to that a lot. And I say the same thing, man. Mel he's just got that butter to his playing, man. It's sweet, it's savory, it's always moving. And it's interesting because those guitars are really clean, right? So when you have this thing where the guitars are cleaner, the sound is pretty clean. The bass has some room to move. They were essentially, I guess, really they were a 4-piece because they had an organ, I guess, to some degree. But yeah,
after the low, say 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe on the 5th, yeah. But the first couple of them were all just 3-piece.
3-piece,
you listen to that and you just, I tell you, I listen to Don Brewer pounding that snare and I feel sorry for his snare because that thing is just, you hear the tape compression. It's just like every hit is just boom.
Yeah. Woo. Yeah. It's funny. I got to see them a few months back. They came through Phoenix and Bruce Kulick was playing with them at the time. And again, Bruce, who, in KISS is, as when you're in a certain group, there's a sort of a template that you fit in. And, but man, Bruce is a fantastic guitar player. And it was really great to see him play. But I thought the same thing. I go, dude, fucking Don Brewer, man, there he is right in front of me. And I was just thinking, American Band, I'm thinking of that live album, and I'm watching him play. And I'm just going, man, this guy has not lost a thing, man. He's got the same soul. He's got the same heart for it. And, to me, that is really everything, is if you really have the heart and soul for it still to be out doing it and out playing. And I thought they did. I thought it was.
Well, I've actually seen that lineup as well. It's funny. I'll just tell you a story real quick. So, I went to St. Petersburg, Florida has this sort of summer at the park thing, and they have various bands that come in and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked on there and it says Grand Funk Railroad. I'm like, All right. So I went and found, a couple friends of mine, much younger. I said, hey, y'all want to go to the park and check out this band? So they got on, and of course, the bass is like the biggest thing. And I'm sitting there just grooving, smiling, and this one girl looks at me and goes, well, the bass is so loud. I said, exactly. Because music that you hear these days, apart from like Primus or some of those kind of bands, Red Hot Chili Peppers, nobody plays that one.
No. We were recording a Megadeth record at A&M Studios, which is now Jim Henson, I guess, right on off Sunset and La Brea there, and it was The World Needs a Hero. So I'm in there, carving tracks. I come out, and the two receptionist girls are out in the hallway just hanging out bullshitting, and they're leaning up against the wall, and the one goes, "Ooh, your bass feels so good." And I went, wow, that's interesting. So I went, no wonder the ladies like the bass. You know what I mean? It's probably what the same thing that lady said at the show. And I remember I went to my brother-in-law's wedding some years back, and it was like the first time since like high school I was like on the dance floor, right? Like down, and there's like a DJ and doing a thing, and all of a sudden, and it was it was like hip hop and some stuff like that, and I'm going, it's kind of like standing front of house for the first time in a long time, right? And standing there and just kind of going, now I get why they like us bass players, because there is a thing that happens, whether it's Grand Funk or, a DJ, whatever, right there, that it's the low end, man, that really moves it and connects it. And, the three of us probably don't get to experience it that much because we're on the stage, not in front of the stage, but it's when it's grooving and moving, it's, I can tell why people connect with that, so.
Sure.
No.
Give her a ride on the back of your Harley and she'll love you even more.
Yeah, there's that and the horse, right?
Yeah, it's funny, David. I follow your wife on Facebook, and so I see your ranch and all your animals and things like that. So what's it like, kind of just being, farm guy at this point in life? Did you ever expect to kind of be this guy? Be the having a farm with animals and things like that.
I try to separate everything in my life. That adds for sanity and peace. So when I'm out and about and working, obviously, and Mr. Ellefson knows this probably all too well, you see crowded airports, crowded venues, everywhere you're going. It's just, I'm somewhat claustrophobic by nature. So I put up with all this because I like what I do. I don't care for flying and what have you. But I love being on stage. I love performing. I love writing. I love recording. But when I'm home, it's really nice to have peace and quiet and no expectations.
I definitely agree with that. Now that we've moved, I live in Indiana now, like kind of in the, we bought a house and some land and stuff like that out in the middle of nowhere. So I do enjoy that. And, the small town gas station, things like that, like all the good things that come with kind of being away from the city. Because growing up, I wanted to be the guy that lived above the, dry cleaner or the Chinese food restaurant, have a studio apartment or things like that. And the older I get, the more I'm like, put me as far away from people as possible.
That happens apparently.
Well, it's funny. I grew up on a farm, right? We had a big grain farm. And when I was really young, when I was about 2 years old, one of my very first memories actually as a kid was I believe it was either my aunt or my grandmother holding me. And I watched the cattle trucks going in and out of the yard there. And my dad had a heart attack when I was like 2. And he sold off the cattle that we had, the beef cattle, right? The Ellefsons were always, cattle sellers and stuff, and through the Midwest. And then, so I grew up really on a grain farm, not really so much with animals. And it's so, I loved it. It was a great, great life. And then when I moved to Hollywood, once kind of thine eyes had seen the glory of what that was in the big city. And I was like, it's doesn't look anything like it did on TV when I was watching like Charlie's Angels and shit. You know what I mean? It's like
Motley Crue videos, girls, and driving up and down Sunset. And it's a big party. By the time I got out there, thankfully. So when I was a kid growing up in North Carolina, it was everybody's sort of this vision, this mecca that, okay, we're going to sell everything we own. We're going to go to LA. We're going to make it big. Yada, yada, yada. And I know many people who did that. And about 3 to 4 years later, I came back home with the tail between her legs, and it didn't work. And so I'm glad that I never did that. But by the time I did get to LA, thankfully it was on a tour and I was paid to be there. So I'm, all right, where's the Sunset Strip and what's going on? Like, I'm like, a dump. I mean, it's just like, it's nothing like the rock and roll videos look like. So
no, and when I got there in 1983, it was full on. I mean, it was, the US Festival had just happened. So, Van Halen headline, Judas Priest, Quiet Riot. And Motley Crue opened because they were the little baby bands, but Quiet Riot's #1 on MTV. So it was all going on. But I tell you what, man, looking at that, I mean, being a kid from the farm in Minnesota, I'm like, where do you carve into this? It's like, where does a guy like me even fit into this? As we called it, jumping into the Hollywood blender, because just like you said, most of it beat people up pretty good. I had 3 friends who moved out there with me. They all ended up going back to Minnesota, like within the summer. They were like, "Yeah, we're out. This isn't for us." I stayed, of course, and it worked out. But I needed, for sure Mustaine, because he grew up around that. So it was a good partnership, right? Obviously, he needed me as a partner and a wingman. I needed him as a big brother to sort of, weed through that. All that it is, right? Because you saw it with your own 2 eyes, right? You saw it. You get to the Sunset Strip and you're going, "What a fucking dump this place is." And the other thing too is I see bands like Poison. Those guys were hardworking guys. From Pennsylvania. They moved out there, or at least Brett did. Moved out there, and he worked his fucking ass off. Obviously, they found a gimmick and a thing that worked for him. But I used them as an example because, I couldn't imagine. I used to drive through Laurel Canyon all the time, and people up there flyering, on the telephone poles, right? And as you're driving down into Hollywood, you see who's playing at the Coconut Teaser and Club Lingerie and the Whiskey and Shit. And I'm just like going, man, so to some degree, for you guys starting out in Tampa, let's say, if that was your Hollywood, so to speak, because, look, there was a real scene there, right? And you guys planted a flag. I mean, just like there's San Francisco, there's LA, there's obviously New York. You guys anchored Tampa. Those are kind of the 4 corners of America where metal really came out of America, So with your scene there, what was that like in Tampa? What was the grind like, just getting everything started there?
I mean, well, Florida is, being a southern state, is slow. So it's everything is very relaxed. I mean, the weather is so warm that it's, if you're cold and you have to hustle that much more just to stay warm, I feel like that probably has something to do with it. But yeah, I mean, there was a great studio there, Morrisound, which just got inducted into some kind of, not a Hall of Fame, they put a historical site,
like the National Registry or something like that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, right.
And those guys are great, and they worked real hard. And we lived there, so that's where we we recorded. But a lot of other bands would come in, and they wanted to be a part of it as well. So many bands recorded there, and it became this thing to where probably folks romanticized about, there's probably some bar I can go to downtown and see all these bands and everybody's hanging out and singing Kumbaya. We were friends with folks, but we kind of kept to ourselves and just worked on the music.
Now, at that same time, when you guys, so look, Death, Obituary, Morbid Angel, right? There's the collection, right? Cannibal Corpse, etc. But then there was also Savatage, right? And they were what, Orlando, kind of?
They're Tampa, and they
Tampa,
were
okay.
like the first.
Okay.
Even before it was Savatage, it was called Avatar.
Yeah.
And I'm John Oliva did an awful lot for music in general and the Tampa scene, and hell of a guy, hell of a songwriter.
Yeah, I remember getting our first records before we signed to Combat Records. They, remember that the label would send you some records like, hey, here's our family, right? And I remember getting Dungeons Calling and Sirens and stuff, those early Savatage records, and then doing a tour with them with Dio and stuff, and
cool.
That basically once Paul O'Neill got in and really developed that Hall of the Mountain King record, which I still one of my favorites. And I think they basically own Morrisound now, right? I think that the TSO organization,
the TSO stuff,
yeah. So, it's, but yeah, that's interesting that a studio. I mean, I'm trying to think. There was Prairie Sound, I guess, up in the Bay Area that was kind of the same thing. I think, I know Marty Friedman recorded up there some of the Shrapnel Record stuff, maybe even Journey, whatever. But so, I always think about these locations, you know, up in New York. None of those venues are around. You know, the Ritz has been renamed. Lemoore is gone. You know, in Hollywood, there's still the Whiskey.
Lemore's gone now. I thought they
I-
opened back up.
It's news to me. I mean, maybe they did. The old one over in Brooklyn, did that open back up again?
I don't know whether it's the same location. I mean, I played there a few times. I don't
Okay.
recall. You know, I don't get up there all that much. So
Yeah. I was always thinking about like Chicago. The Metro is still there.
Hmm.
You know, so I always go back to these historical places because we are these historical guys now, right? We have become classic rock. Soon to be oldies, I guess, right? Oldies of metal. And so I always think about these, but like say Bay Area, you know, I don't know if Slim's was around. I know that's kind of a venue there now.
I remember that.
That's still there, but yeah. So Morrisound, it's interesting that's kind of like an anchor of your day, you know.
There was definitely a time where, you know, I would get a record and it would be, you know, signed to Roadrunner Records, Monty Connor's name's on it, Morrisound's name's on it, Scott Byrne, you know, like if you had any of those four things, like I'm buying it. You know, if I saw Morrisound, Scott Burns, Monty, Roadrunner, anything, I'm grabbing it to check it out because, you know, that studio had such a reputation, you know, for me as a teenager, and through all my friend group, you know, we all knew that like if you recorded a Morrisound, it was probably going to be good.
Hmm. Yes, sir.
I'm trying to think about the same. Trying to think about the same with Texas, you know, because like Hellstar was out of Houston, right? And there was Cardi's. Remember doing that little scene down there. There was Cardi's. I just remember that, you know, we were very poor, so if we could afford a Super 8, there was usually like a Luby's buffet next door, and so it was like, fuck yeah, $10 per diem, you can actually eat at fucking Luby's, buy some beer, get some cigarettes, and play at Cardi's, you know, win, right? So so what's going on from here now? Do you have like for the rest of this year, are you on the road? Are you off the road? Are you ramping?
Yeah, I'll
something
leave
up here?
again about a week,
Okay.
and just some festivals in Europe.
Okay.
And then I have a short stint in South America for like first part of October,
Mhm.
and then November, December, I'm back in Europe.
Now, what band is this that you're promoting in this?
Well, so we have shows with Ultimus, Terrorizer, and Morbid.
Okay, cool.
So, you know, sometimes, you know, you play 1 year with one band at a festival, then you can go back the
Right.
next year, but it's got to be a different band, unless you're Metallica. And
Yeah.
And then you can play everything constantly, and you know,
Yeah.
nobody gets bored, but they've worked hard and they deserve it.
Dave, I want to ask you a question about, you know, when you started hearing guys like David Vincent, Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse, all that stuff kind of coming out of Tampa, what was your reaction to it? You know, kind of hearing that, just, you know, the guttural vocals, you know, the like, I mean, you know, Pete Sandoval's drums. I mean, Jesus Christ, that guy was you know, machine gun back there. So I mean, you know, hearing those guys kind of, yeah, right. And you know, hearing those guys kind of pop up.
Well, I think, you know, to speak to what you just said, David, I'm kind of the same thing, right? I've got Kings of Thrash, Dieth, you know, a few different things. So it depends on which band goes to which location. This year it's this band, next year it's that band. So, which, you know, and having played in one band for many years, I like the variety. You know what I mean? I understand why guys go solo, or they make a solo record, or they go do something. Hopefully they don't have to leave their band, but they can go do that and then come back, you know? So I personally enjoy the variety of it. And, you know, then to what you're asking, Josh, you know, it was a different day. So we'd see things in the magazines, right? There was different, fanzines, some of them very low dose, some of them a bit more polished, you know, the Metal Forces, Bernardo, some of these guys, you know, they would have, pretty good high quality stuff. And then, you know, by the time you made, you know, Kerrang, or, you know, the Metal Hammer of the Rock Hard probably was more of the magazine back in the day. You know, you come here to Europe and you'd see those magazines. I think that's really where I learned about Morbid Angel more than anything, is I learned about bands from their photos and seeing them in magazines, you know, and maybe at a festival, or, And then, same with me. Suddenly it would be on MTV, it'd be Late Night Headbangers Ball or something. And it's like, oh, there it is. And, I like that I grew up pre MTV, and then I like that I also lived during MTV, that it brought sort of a visual feature of it. And, so to me, it was a new sound. It was something beyond what we were doing. When I got to LA and it was Motley Crue and Rat and Quiet Riot, our thrash genre was the next thing beyond that, and credit to Lars and, for having that vision, to start that, because they kicked the door down for all the rest of us to follow through. And then behind that, Death was certainly, they were always, Chuck was always in the magazines. And, so there was, there was this, I guess if you kind of think about, I didn't really think about it as Tampa, I didn't go, geographically, New York, LA, San Francisco, I think were three different scenes. I didn't so much think about you, David, as, oh, that's a Tampa guy. You know what I mean? I didn't, to me, it didn't register, as much like that, so to me, you guys were the next thing, I think, coming up sort of behind us, really, you were the next, and it was a new sound, and it's always the next generation, that ushers in this new sound, and it's very polarizing at times. Sometimes people don't understand it, but if it resonates with a fan base, then all of a sudden it gets traction, right? It's a new sound, it's a new voice, it's a new lyric. It tells a story. It tells their story, I went and saw Linkin Park the other day. I became a fan once Emily started singing in the band. I went and saw it and went, yeah, it's great. It sounds cool. I like it. It's not my song. You know what I mean? It's just not my song, and I look around and I see a stadium full of 40,000 people. It's their song, and everybody's probably 10, 15 years younger than me. And I go, God bless them. This is their song, A lot of people in metal, they all bashed on Nirvana, and when Nirvana came out, I went, this is fucking cool, man. This is like punk rock. I like it, and it wasn't my song, so to speak. It wasn't my generation, but that is the song that speaks to that generation. The same way that David and even Josh, the three of us, we got to be part of bands, creating sounds, creating music that we and our peers believed in, enough so that some more peers, they told two friends, and it expanded, And I remember I was reading in Geddy Lee's memoir about that too. He said, we really didn't care what anybody thought about us. We just made this kind of deep, heady, trippy music, and we just hoped there were some other kind of nerdy, quirky people that like us that would like it too. Apparently they did. They became Rush, So I think, that's, to me, that's kind of what the story is. And watching you, David, grow up and bring Morbid Angel up around that, just for example, that one band, that really, that's something most people don't get to do, and I've always admired that about you. That's why when I met you at NAMM, I was like, God, this guy is such a gentleman. It's like, this guy's for being as fucking for being as dark and heavy as he is, he's sure he dressed nice, he smells good, he talks real nice. It's like, I like this guy. So anyway, it was a good experience.
My Neanderthal image here, buddy.
Texas will do that to you,
Well, I guess the last question for David, kind of seeing the death metal and the kind of the underground stuff has continued to last and continued to strive in the underground, and you kind of being a godfather of the sound, with people, new bands still popping up that kind of sound what you were doing 30 years ago. How is that for you to kind of see that see that continue and people still embrace that style of music?
Well, I always look for new stuff to like, because I'm a music fan first and foremost. I feel like what we brought to the table was something different. We didn't listen to other records and say, oh, we need to sound like this. We need to sound like we sound. So we would really be very shy, introverted while we were writing, because I didn't want to sound like something else, or even listen to something that was close to us that would some kind of inadvertently influence me. But these days I look hard to find something that feels unique or sounds unique to me. There's a whole lot of stuff, as I'm sure y'all would agree, that it just sounds like rehash, something that any one of us did, better 30 years ago. So I'm not saying it can't be done.
No.
I just wish folks would, rather than, people come up to me and they're like, man, I'm a big fan of your band, and, here, check out our CD, and I listen to it, and it's virtual plagiarism, as opposed to being something that sounds like it.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I'm influenced by a lot of people too, but I don't sound like any of them.
Right.
I think you raised a really good point, David, that when you're working on a record, when you're writing, when you're recording it, whatever it is, especially in the writing, the composing phase, you really do go into that cocoon, don't you? And I think it's important, you finish a day of writing, or you're in the studio even recording, which is also kind of to me, a secondary phase of the creative process, is the making of the record of the songs you wrote. You go out to the car, suddenly the radio's on. It's like, oh, fuck, turn that off, man. I don't want to hear, I don't know what that is. It could even be a popular song, could even be a song you liked a month ago, but it's like, oh God, get it off. I just don't want anything to come in and influence anything that I'm doing. Other than maybe when you're testing mixes in your car, and you put it up against
that makes sense.
Yeah, you put it up against whatever it is, Judas Priest, whatever, Metallica, whatever it is, you may be, kind of just checking how's our low end, how are we sounding competitive, but yeah, I think during that writing phase, it's very important to have this sort of this purity, that you really are focused on it. You're not inspired by other stuff. Because I'm like you, I go through listening phases. And I'm sort of a sponge. I like absorbing things. I'm open to hearing new things. And then I go through other periods where I'm like, man, I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to listen to anybody else's music. And it's not a dislike for it. It's just, I'm really focused on a path right now. And I just don't want any of that coming in. It's like not wanting to hear a conversation at a table next to you. It's like, get that away from me,
Sure. I get it, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes inadvertently we get the influenced or impressed upon by things that we don't know it, but if you're exposed to it, it may happen in some strange way.
No,
I did check out the crossover of the century today with Cryptopsy, with Billy Strings doing a solo on a Cryptopsy song, and it's just it's incredible to see a dude like that, Billy Strings, out there selling out arenas, doing some of the crazy bluegrass type music, but he has the love for technical death metal too, so he's gonna throw down a solo on a Cryptopsy record, and it's funny, you're like, I wonder if I'm gonna be able to notice if it's him, and then as soon as he started playing, I was like, oh yeah, that it's just kind of coming at a death metal solo from a different aspect, and I love that in a day like today, like you can actually do that. 30 years ago it might have been frowned upon for that kind of crossover, but now it's like, you can have a Billy Strings on your record and nobody's going to bat an eye.
Well, listen, there's always going to be haters.
Yeah.
It's funny, I said, and I was talking around the house some years ago when my grandmother was still alive, and she overheard my phone conversation, and she goes, what is this hater? What do you mean? And I explained it to her, and she sat there and took a sip of her Pabst Blue Ribbon, and she goes, I think it's good if you don't have haters, you're not doing something right. That's what my grandmother said. I was like, Granny, I love you.
Thank you, Granny. I've said that too. It's like, if you don't have haters, you're not doing it right. You know what I mean? Because you certainly can't be everything to everybody. And, in this day and age where comments are open, and, this shit is, it's encouraged, that it's, I have friends who are like, man, I never even look at a comment. I just and for the most part, I don't either. I just get on with good stuff. I'll check and see our podcast is up. Okay, great, thanks, Josh. Move on, and move on to the next thing. But look, great music is polarizing. It just is, and it's new stuff that comes out. If it's what becomes sort of acceptable at a certain point. I mean, look, by the time the Black Album, everybody became a Metallica fan, right? Not so when Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning was out. You know what I mean? It's and I know that you have your own albums too. We had it with Megadeth. Not everybody was a fan of Killing Is My Business. Peace Sells. Yeah, all right, yeah, that song's not too bad. All right, all right. Now the girls like Megadeth too. You know what I mean? But it was it wasn't like that. In the beginning, and I think. Whether it's Post Malone, it's Korn, whatever it is, things get sort of socially normalized after a while. But, when we're starting out, man, I don't know. I think probably all three of us here, that's part of what we love about it too, right? Is that we are definitely writing a song different than what is out there. And to know that there's like a small faction, our own little sort of secret club, if you will, that loves what we do, that still inspires me. Does it do the same with you, David?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love what I do. If I didn't, trust me, I would not do it. I don't do anything that I don't want to do. Well, to a degree. Sometimes you have to choose the lesser of two evils. But in general, I love what I do. I love making music. I love the interaction with the fans. When you can look in people's eyes from the stage, you can tell that they're there in spirit, in addition to being there physically. That's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Like no matter what, my favorite podcast, my favorite music. Anything that I love, and I'm like, there is absolutely no way anybody could ever hate this. You go to their social media, you go to their podcast reviews, everything else. It'll be like, this sucks. This is the worst thing possible, and you're like, all right, I must have some funky ears or something, because no matter what, some of the greatest stuff out there, and they all have haters. So it's just like, what can you do?
Until you walk in the room and they go, "Oh my God, there he is. Hey, can you sign this, please?"
Right.
Right.
So it is. Well, listen, David, we won't take any more of your time, man. Thanks for being gracious enough to come onto the show. It's great to see you again, and I'm so happy about everything that you're doing and moving on. And I love the musical palette that you have of all the stuff you're doing. So you're a man after my own heart, to keep that going. So
we're all OG.
So ROG. So
old guys know how to write songs.
So let's get a I Am Morbid and a Kings of Thrash tour together, so I can just go enjoy myself for a night.
Done. There you go. All right, put it together, Josh.
Awesome.
Awesome, guys.
All right, brother.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
Yep. Have a good one. Yep.
Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
See you. You too.